Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Thompson, along with my very, very happy partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how was your evening?
Let me walk you through this, Greg, right? So today, you guys know me, right? I've been pumping the brakes for like 4 years on people, telling everybody, "Yeah, let's chill." Brandon Beane said we're not making any splash moves, right? We've gone through our off-season wish list and trying to keep it realistic and bring Bills fans back into reality and all this stuff. And then today I wake up and everyone's just feasting for Chandler Jones. And I'm sitting there like, maybe I would like it. I would love to have a Chandler Jones. I can't see it. It doesn't seem like a possibility. I'm not going to get my hopes up. I've been here before. So I kind of ignore that noise a little bit all day, and it keeps going on throughout the day. And then the guy that I was super excited about yesterday that I was pumping my fist in the air about backs out of a deal. Right? JD Mckissick, not going to be a Buffalo Bill. We're not going to talk about a lot of JD Mckissick tonight. So I was sad, Greg. I was like, oh, that was like a gut punch. Like, oh, he chose somebody else over us. That's so dumb. What is he doing? And then Chandler Jones goes off the board. He's off the board. And so it's like to the Raiders of all places. And for a big deal, and we're like, oh man, like we're not getting anything. And so I just felt a double gut punch. Like, oh, this is just going to be a real boring off season. And then I'm just hanging out with my family, doing the dinner thing, getting everything done, thinking like the day's pretty much over, hearing some rumblings about a couple things. Didn't even see this coming. Oh, wait, what? You got to be freaking kidding me. The Bills signed Von Miller?
Woo!
What the
Miller?
Dude.
My wife's exact reaction as we're sitting there. I've had NFL Network on pretty much 24/7 the last 3 days. She was like, wait, isn't he like really good?
My wife was even excited, and we've talked about my wife's interest in football, and she was like, wow, that's a good one.
So obviously the Buffalo Bills have signed Von Miller, and we're going to get into the contract here in a minute for a 6-year, $120 million contract. He is 32 years old. I understand why people are anxious about it. He is still an incredibly impactful pass rusher. You saw him in the playoffs. You saw him making big time plays all season long, all throughout the playoffs. He is also renowned as an incredible teacher and leader. So we couldn't ask for anyone better for Groot and AJ Epinesa and Carlos Basham to spend time around than to have this guy who is going to be able to be an impactful guy and be that guy who can go on a key third down, fourth down in the end of a playoff game and to go make those moves right in the same range. Jackson here talking about the same kind of thing as Chandler Jones, that same age range, the kind of guys, Khalil Mack, those same things. Teams are excited and they still have plenty left in the tank, and the Bills are going to be adding an incredibly impactful player. As far as the contract goes, reasons not to get too anxious. Plenty of other people that are out there. Andrew Brandt, one of the smartest, football business guys out there, shared the same sentiments that I did on Twitter. It is a 3-year, $51 million deal. They're going to pay $17.5 million. They're pretty much tied to him for 3 seasons.
Okay.
They probably could get out of it after 2 with a little bit of pain.
Sure.
But ultimately it's a 3-year deal. And that's what it's going to end up being to be able to do it. And with Kel's awesome point here, the medical staff and the ability to keep him in his best shape and in his best condition, facilities there are going to be fantastic. How they're able to manage that. So it's going to be interesting. We'll go through. I joked there are so many other pieces that they're going to have to do. Every single other lever that I joked about on our salary cap spectacular, they are going to have to pull all of them. They're going to have to restructure Trey White. They're going to have to restructure Dean Dawkins. They're going to restructure Micah Hyde. They already talked about Hyde and Poyer, probably Josh Allen, everyone that they can. But ultimately, when you do this kind of,
Oh,
move,
everyone's on board.
everyone's really excited.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys very, very much tonight. The generosity is really exciting to be talking about this. But when you add a guy like Von Miller, we were just talking pre-show, Patrick Peterson was just on NFL Network talking about, oh, maybe I need to go check out what's going on there. This is the kind of thing that gets everyone's interest. Every remaining free agent is now stopping and saying, hey, what do they have going on up there at Buffalo? They've already got Josh Allen. Now they've got Von Miller. Do I want to go be a part of that? That's a really exciting spot to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And just we talked about his age, right? He's going to be 33 years old here this season, and he's still very productive. And there's some conflicting data out there. I put out a post about his stats, and that's including the playoffs because he had a really nice playoff run. So I didn't want to leave that out. So in 19 games in 2021, he had 82 pressures. And you guys have seen me talk about Jerry Hughes and talk about him being up there in the list of elite guys. Jerry was like 55 and clearly on a lot different snap count, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, how Von Miller will be used. But 82 pressures, 13 sacks, 10 hits, 59 hurries, which was good for second in the league behind Max Crosby, who just raked in a huge record-breaking deal himself.
So still making an elite impact.
Yeah, huge impact on the quarterback here. 20.4 win percentage, pass rush win percentage, which was good for 8th in the NFL. 9th overall PRP, which takes hits, sacks combined with the amount of times you rush the passer. So he was still top 10 pass rusher in the NFL with a huge impact on the quarterback. And you saw that, right, translated for the Rams. This is a deal, like you said, that allows him to be a mentor to some of the young assets that they've already brought in here, but also is going to be an immediate impact against the opposing passers with the pass rush. He's going to pull that gravity that we talk about with Stephon Diggs away from Ed Oliver. This might be what propels Ed Oliver to be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type player. That
finisher, when they push the pocket and move the pocket, that we didn't have that guy to always finish. He is that finisher. And you talked about the snap count. In all the games he played last year in LA, you're talking 72%, 80%, 84.9, 89, 89. A lot of really high snap count games.
I don't think he needs to be asked that here.
He doesn't need to. So I think I got asked that on Twitter. Like, oh, does this mean we're finally going to see a guy, play more snaps? And I said, honestly, no. I bet you that our health and wellness facilities and our ability to manage his snap count was part of the sales pitch. I bet you that was part of the plan to be able to get him here. And that, granted, it's not going to be 50, but maybe he's like 65% and not 75 and 80% because they can keep him fresh, because we can afford to bring in, a talented guy behind him to be able to do that. And, we'll talk about it later on as we go through a lot of the other moves that have gone on here. But ultimately, I think, so Devin asking a good question here. There are negative impacts to the restructures.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to everything, right?
It's credit card spending. You are pulling money from future years to pull it into now. So the one gamble that Brandon Beane is making is that the salary cap is going to go up pretty aggressively. So
those TV contracts,
with the new TV money, there's a good chance that that's going to be able to he's gambling that's going to offset the restructures and the things they're pumping into future years. And you got to remember, they have those huge bonuses in Josh Allen's contract that they can also kick those into future years, which I'm sure they've already reached out to him to say, hey, we're going to do some of those as a signing bonus, not as a roster bonus. And we'll kick that into future years. So they're going to be fine. They're going to be able to work around this, but it is going to be like some of the stuff you've seen with the Saints, some of the stuff you've seen with other teams, where now we're going to have some machinations that we need to do to get us into cap shape by the time that we get there. So
where are we projecting that cap hit for this year is?
So the couple numbers that we have, and obviously the first number that came out was 6 years, 120 million. That's crazy. It's not going to be 6 years, 120 million. What it is almost an exact match of Chandler Jones' deal. It's a 3-year, $51.5 million deal. It's going to be 17.5 million each year, and it's going to be pretty firm through there because 45 million of it is guaranteed. So the first 2 years, what it basically means is the first 2 years are guaranteed at 17.5 million each, and the third year, 10 million of the 17.5 is guaranteed. So they probably could get out of it with a $10 million dead cap and 7.5 million in savings, but that's roughly what it's going to end up being. My guess is it's going to be like a $30 million signing bonus spread out over those 5 years at about 6 million each year. Then probably a $1 million minimum salary this year and like a $4 to $5 million salary next year. So this year, I think it's going to be like a $7 million cap hit.
Perfect.
Next year, it's probably going to be like 10 or 11 million. And then in 2024, when we still owe him like 17.5 million in cash, it's probably going to be like a $25 million cap hit. But that's also the year that they're projecting to be the huge jump in TV contract money. So we really added him for 2
We'll already
years.
have had a Super Bowl by then, so nobody's going to care.
Probably two of them, two Super Bowl parades by then. So it's going to be fine. We're not going to have to really worry about it in that third year. But ultimately, it's a 3-year, $51 million deal, 17 million each year. And in a situation where it's going to be roughly, a $7 to $10 million cap hit this year, a $10 to $12 million cap hit next year. Those are very, very manageable. Those are good numbers. Those are very, very doable. And then honestly, we'll deal with the rest later. Sure. We're going to have some stuff to deal with in 2024 and 2025. Whatever. We'll deal with it then.
Teams are doing it, right? Like it'll be fine. I guess the next question then is we're pulling these coupons, we're pulling these levers.
Yeah.
Does that is there going to be future levers remaining here going forward? Like how many other contracts have you seen that like next year, right? There's going to be needs again and splash guys that we're going to get all excited about. How many levers are they going to have going into the future if they pull them all this year?
This certainly limits it. Certainly limits it. Next year, you're going to have Ed Oliver's 5th-year contract. We're obviously going to have to decide something on Tremaine Edmonds. We're going to have some other extensions coming up. Dawson Knox contract is expiring. We have some other talented guys that are going to be in that spot. So it's going to cause some challenges that we'll get to. But we've known this was going to be the case. And just like we joked about with Patrick Peterson's comments, honestly, now you get the best of both worlds, that we can lean into it if we get the kind of guy who wants to be interested at this kind of high number, but we're also going to get the other guys who want to come for a cheaper deal. We're going to get a cheaper deal on Rodger Saffold. We got a really good deal on Tim Settle. Some other guys that we'll talk about here, pretty solid deal on OJ Howard. We're going to get Jordan Phillips back at probably the veteran minimum. We're probably going to add another familiar defensive end. I'm not sure which one of the two we're going to get. Probably another familiar defensive end at a pretty cheap number. Yeah. And that's going to be because of what's going on here. So we'll be okay that way. But adding.
Yeah, and like you guys know me, I pump the brakes big time on draft and getting those additions into your team, but it's going to become more important now, right? And you're going to have all these picks. What do we got? 9 picks here this year. I don't know that they're going to keep all of them and how that's going to go, but
9 cheap contracts is a good thing.
9 cheap contracts is a good thing, and league wide, it's about between a 40 and 50% hit rate. If you can get 4 of those guys year 1 to come in and contribute, year 2 maybe 6 of them contribute, and you continue to build in through that way. That's another way to continue. And Brandon Beane has done a pretty good job here throughout the draft of getting contributors in early, and so that's going to be another thing to keep an eye on that we'll be having you guys covered here over the next month or so, getting ready for the draft. But I'm glad we didn't do a lot of that work going into this week, man, because really Brandon Beane's done such a great job here filling all these huge holes that we were concerned about before going into the draft. And as I was looking into early mocks, edge was the one where, for me, because of the lack of what I thought spending, I kept coming back to Jerry Hughes. I know there's some guys that are decent edges in the draft, but that's another one of these positions, Greg, that just doesn't always seem to pop right away. Like Max Crosby, I feel like is more of a rare instance where you get a later edge, not a top 5 blue chip edge.
The minority.
Yeah, and that's where the Bills are. They're not in a position to get a top 5 blue chip type guy, and so you're hoping that you're going to get a round 2 grade like Groot last year, where that's going to come in and just break the world up, and that's just not how it works. So to be able to, in free agency, get one of the premier guys in the league and just get that hole out of the way, and now you can fill in. Now bringing Jerry Hughes back is just, that's bonus. That's house money.
Oh yeah. So obviously we're really excited. This was going to be the focus of our entire opening of the show. We just added a player with 115 career sacks, a guy that has 7 career double-digit sack seasons and 9 seasons with 8 or more sacks. He is incredibly impactful every time he steps on the field. He's going to have a fantastic domino effect, like you said, on all the rest of the guys. We'll get to some of the interior and what we did there, but this is an enormous signing that we're really excited about. So we'll talk about some of the other pieces, but ultimately, let's start to walk through a little bit of how we got to this point and what took place to be able to get us into this spot. So I'm going to go back in time a little bit. Obviously, we started bringing back some smaller guys. We talked last week about the Saran Neal deal, Tyrell Dodson. Right after the show, we added Jake Kumaro and brought him back. And then we saw a couple other releases. We saw AJ Klein get released to create cap space. We saw John Feliciano get released. And then right as we got into the first day of free agency, we saw Darryl Williams get released. And I know that was one that I don't think either you or I really anticipated was going to be the case. I thought it was going to be the pay cut.
We talked about it, though, on the cap extravaganza there, whatever, the big cap show. We talked about that was really a likely possibility, but I did assume that he would take that pay cut and stay. But I tweeted that out as soon as Saffold became available, that if I was Bean, I would call Darryl Williams' agent right now and say, here, you're taking a huge pay cut, or we're going to go sign this guy that already played with Aaron Cromer. And that is probably similar to what I think it might be pretty in line with how it happened.
Or they reached out to, which we'll talk about as our first big addition, Rodger Saffold, and asked him if he was interested, and he said yes, and they didn't even bother. And they just went and said, hey, Darryl, we wish you all the best. Thanks for what you did, but this is how it was going to work. So the first big addition, there were a couple other ones. They did the restructure on Matt Hawk, which removed his guarantee and removed next year. He's basically now camp leg.
No need for anyone to freak out. It was actually a smarter move than really what we were all talking about, which was we were listening to how Brandon Beane talked about it in the end of season press conference and just assumed, hey, this guy's gone, let's just cut him. It's actually a smarter move because it gives you a little insurance to get into camp, make sure that you get a decent guy.
Teach the new rookie how to be a good holder.
Yeah, work through camp. You're going to need an extra guy holding and punting anyway to get through camp. And then thank you for nothing, Matt Hawk.
A couple other internal moves real quick. They brought back Isaiah Mckenzie, which was a pleasant one. I know the initial number got reported as $8 million, and I had some sticker shock, but then the reality came out, and it was 2 years, $4.4 million, and a $1.85 million cap hit in the first year. Certainly no real commitment, no long-term anything, but at that number, I'm perfectly fine with him being back.
Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, that's fine with him being back. I think this one's a tough one for me because I do Bills fans, guys, there's a difference in who Isaiah Mckenzie is and who Bills Mafia wants him to be. And the contracts continue to show you who I think the league thinks he is. And he can say all he wants, that he is taking less money to play here. He wants to be in Buffalo, loyalty, all that. He did say on One Bills Live the other day, he was talking about his agent was messaging him constantly and talking to him constantly and updating him with what teams were saying. So it's not like he wasn't reaching out and talking to other teams and getting values from other teams. And if he was really turning down double the amount of money to come back to Buffalo, well, good on him. I don't believe that. I think we see more times than not, free agency is all about money. I think that his market is right in line with what the Bills gave him. And so this is a pump the brakes moment for me of, I don't believe the Bills see him as a true wide receiver 3 that's going to come in and take the slot from Cole Beasley and really run with that. I don't think Cole Beasley is part of the future, but I don't think their answer to that is going to be Isaiah Mckenzie. I don't think that's the plan anyway. I think he's competing for wide receiver 4, and that's where he would be most places. And that's okay. I think that's a good thing to have a speedy gadget wide receiver 4, but let's not make it something that it's not.
Yeah, obviously they've shown it back-to-back years with cap and cash numbers of 1.75 and 1.85 million. Yeah. That's what they think of him, and that's honestly what the rest of the league thinks of him. And God bless him for getting it and for continuing to play in the NFL and see if he can compete and do more. I'm excited to say we have now entered the large human segment of
I
the
like
show.
these guys. Beef.
First, we extended Mitch Morse, which we did project, and we're accurate in projecting 2 year, $19.5 million, almost exactly what we projected. I said 2 years, $20 million. So I was
we
off
as
by
in
$500,000.
you, but yeah.
But that lowered his cap hit down, saved about $2.25 million, and that allowed you brought it up, and I'll let you run with this one. The Bills snagged their first outside free agent, Rodger Saffold, a monster of a human, 6'5", 325, played 15 games plus in 6 straight seasons, familiar with Aaron Kromer. And for anybody who saw the pictures that I posted, he is a monster of a man, huge RAS score, elite athlete, and in phenomenal shape. And someone that I think is going to add a lot of power to this offensive line.
Yeah, I think he's going to add a lot of power. And I think another thing that he's going to bring is that, Mitch Morse has really been the elder statesman. Darryl Williams has had a lot of reps. He is a little bit of an elder statesman, but this is like a really established professional interior offensive lineman that's going to be added into this mix. And I think that it really, for the first time, I feel like they've given Mitch Morse something to go next time. I do feel Mitch Morse is highly underrated by Bills Mafia. I think he's much better than we realize. And he's younger than everybody realizes at only 29 years old. And
always my favorite thing to remind Nate Geary that Mitch Morse is younger than him.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, I think there's probably hasn't been much more of a disservice in this roster building than them putting or what they've put at the interior offensive line next to him. I think that's made his job a lot harder. I think the things that we point at Mitch Morris and have problems with on Twitter are a reflection of who he's playing next to more times than not throughout his career here. I think it's been pretty much all below average rotational interior offensive linemen. And for the first time, I feel like, Daryl Williams came in and did admirably. I think he did a pretty good job switching positions coming into guard. And actually, he was probably playing guard better than he was playing tackle here towards the end of his time in Buffalo. But he's still not at that level that you really want to have. So now the Bills, in my opinion, have really solidified 3 spots along this offensive line. I think Deion Dawkins is still probably a top 10 left. I think he's right at the end of that top 10 area of left tackles in the NFL. I think he can be there pretty consistently. I think I would say Mitch Morse is probably similar, top 10 center, probably a little bit higher than Dawkins is over at tackle. And now I think you had a guy that maybe isn't at that point in his career anymore where he's in a top 10 in guards, but he's been there and he's shown the ability to play there.
And then the Pro Bowl last year.
Yeah, he's in the Pro Bowl. That one's tough because Pro Bowl can be by name, right? Like
sure.
You've built up credibility and you can be there. I don't know if he's still the player he was in LA with Aaron Kromer, but if there's anyone that can get him back there, it is Aaron Kromer, right? And so I'm really excited that offensive line for me, you've heard me say this so many times, Greg. It's about limiting the weak links along the offensive line. And I really like Spencer Brown. He flashed at times, but still there's a lot of development that needs to go on there. I'm excited to see that development. I'm really intrigued about Rick Bates. I'm assuming that he is brought back, and once he's brought back that he'll be in that starting lineup. But those are still 2 unknowns. But those weak links, if we go into the season, those are the weak links. It's a massive upgrade from where we were a year ago, week 1, going into the NFL season against the Pittsburgh Steelers with the weak links that we had on this line. So a big improvement. And they said one of their big priorities this year was to protect Josh Allen. And so I think that you're seeing that with an addition, and actually an addition by subtraction, in getting rid of John Feliciano and maybe Darryl Williams.
No, I think it's spot on. It's smart, and it brings up one of our next moves here in how much they prioritize it. We saw the restricted free agent tender put on Rick Bates. So I think right now we're looking at, before the draft, pretty locked down. Deion Dawkins at left tackle, Rodger Saffold left guard, Mitch Morris at center, and then a competition at right guard, probably starting with Rick Bates, but then Cody Ford, Ike Bacher, and maybe a mid-round draft
maybe
pick.
Chris Paul at a tool
hey, bring in the point guard and be
right.
able to, have them compete. And then Spencer Brown at right tackle with Tommy Doyle as your swing tackle. They're in really good shape. You give Aaron Kromer 5 elite athletes, everyone at an 8.9 or higher RAS score, really, really strong athleticism. Aaron Kromer is going to be able to mold that into something really exciting that we're going to be able to see probably more of that zone blocking that we've seen in the past, where you now are able to get them out in space, moving together. I'm excited to see where that goes.
Real quick, Fog Gaility, it's a joke. We know his name's Ryan Bates, but they call him in the locker room Rick Bates, so we just have continued to call him Rick Bates. So
no one
for anyone that doesn't know that and they think that we're just a couple of idiots saying the wrong name and aren't in on the inside joke, the locker room calls him Rick. There's no reason to it. Nobody knows why it really
started. No one actually knows why everyone calls him Rick.
They just started calling him Rick.
Yeah, the team calls him Rick, so we call him Rick.
Rick's a more fun name than Ryan. And no offense to the Ryans out there.
Ryan Bates is a versatile backup. Rick Bates is a badass starter.
That's right. It's like Gary Hughes.
When Jerry gets excited, he's Gary. So then we got into more large humans and we added 2 different defensive tackles. One that was very high on our man Eric Turner's list, DaQuan Jones.
He was your number one guy too.
Really excited to be able to have a guy. He is a monster of a human, 6'4", 320, and I think he plays a little bigger than 320 by the looks of it on film. Literally never misses a game. Hasn't missed a game in 7 years. Is just always out there. He eats up blockers left and right, throws grown adults around, is just a big, massive, genuine one tech. He is what you want as a one tech. You guys may remember him from some former really rough games in Tennessee. 7 of his 8 seasons were in Tennessee. He was in Carolina last year, but everyone remembers him as a Tennessee Titan, and is going to be a guy that is really going to benefit Ed Oliver to be able to, do what Star Lotulelei used to be able to do and what we wanted him to do. He is a real genuine one tech through and through that is going to sit there and just eat up space and throw guys around.
Yeah. And so this is going to be a signing. I do think there's going to be fighting about Jones once the season gets going, because this is going to be the same thing that we're talking about year one with Star Lotulelei,
not
where
going to see the stats.
It's not sexy. Yeah, if you go to PFF right now and look at his grades, they're not going to show off sexy. You're not going to see flashy stats. You're not going to see big pressure numbers, anything like that. But if you go over to Eric's feed on Twitter and look at Jones, you'll see some stuff that the Bills have been missing. And I think that it is a perfect fit for what the Bills want. So don't get mad when he doesn't show up all over the box score. He is going to do things that allow other guys to increase their box score. And so I think this is a great move at a position of need. This was the biggest need, in my opinion, going into this offseason because of the unknowns with Star Lotulelei, because you didn't know if you were going to be able to get Harrison Phillips back. We knew Ed Oliver was going to be coming into his own. He really, that second half of the season last year, guys, he was playing at an all-pro level. Like, this guy is really finally coming to the guy we wanted him to be, that they picked him to be, this explosive playmaker. He was still held back by not having the right pieces around him. So we don't even know where his ceiling can go with the right type of pieces, with a Von Miller next to him. I can't believe I'm saying that right now. So that's still fun. That's still fun. I'm tingling a little. And then putting a true one tech next to him, like these types of things really matter. And I think some people will hear, oh, what's it matter if he's a good player? You should be able to do it. Like, who you play next to really has a huge impact in the NFL. And so I think this is going to open up his game, and it's going to open up things. We're finally going to be able to get, I go by Ryan.
Rick Glazer saying, I go by Ryan, ironically.
Yeah. And another thing that hasn't been talked about a ton on Twitter is we want a true evaluation of Tremaine Edmonds, and to have a big body in front of him is exactly what we need to see. Can he be the player that we've here at Cover One have defended that I think he is, which isn't, we're still not saying he's a top player in the league, but that he can be a good linebacker. And if he has a big body in front of him to be able to get off blocks, to be able to shoot the right gap and play gap sound football, I think this is going to help. So at least next year, when we're talking about Tremaine Edmonds, we'll have a true evaluation. We don't have to say, well, I wish we would have found a one tech to put in front of him and see if he could play in front of that. We'll know now. So it's all on these linebackers. So I think it's a great addition. And definitely add some beef.
Yeah. Our guys over Rock Power, I'm not sure if this is Chris or Drew, which one, but Eric Wood said Cromer bringing the pin and pull gap run scheme to take advantage of Motors' run scope between the tackles. We'll see. I'm very excited to see. He has a lot of athleticism to get guys out into space. So whether it's the pin and pull and getting them out in space, or all 5 moving together in the zone, I'm excited to see what he can do with it.
Yeah.
So as the comments here, we are adding one more defensive tackle, and a guy that I've had my eye on for 2 years running was a guy that 2 years in a row I wanted at the trade deadline, and then was one of my primary guys here. Tim Settle is our next addition, another massive dude, 6'3", 325, but this one is, we'll talk about Jordan Phillips in a little bit, very similar to Jordan Phillips in that he looks like he should be a one tech, but he's really just a good penetrating 3-tech who's a
Right.
good pass rusher. So a guy that can
kind of like Akeem Hicks too.
Yeah, yes,
Right.
very similar. Can give Ed Oliver a blow sometimes and let him get a rest, but also can jump next to him in pass rush downs and have 2 penetrating 3-tech defensive tackles that can wreak some havoc up front. So the fact that we got both of them, DaQuan Jones and Tim Settle, I'm really excited about that combo because the 3 of them create a legit defensive tackle rotation to be able to soak up most of those snaps and cover just about everything that we need.
Yeah, this one it's exciting because I think the ceiling could be high, right? If you look
Very
at
young, he's 24.
He's very young still, and that's not really the path that the Bills have gone here this offseason with their free agency signings. And so you're getting a young guy who you're hoping on you get in and develop. He's been stuck a little
by
bit.
3 first-rounders.
Yeah, he's been stuck a little bit on that Washington interior line, and so we really haven't gotten to see who he can truly be. So I'm excited for that. I think that his floor is probably what we were getting out of Harrison Phillips, if we're being honest. We like Harrison Phillips. I wanted him back. I thought he was a priority, but all that stuff for me was more the process. Like, this guy proved he's part of the process.
Came back from injury.
I like drafting your own and developing your guys, but he realistically only had a handful of good games as a Buffalo Bill, right? Like, because of those injuries and because of the battle back, he did play well towards the end of the year and helped Ed Oliver a lot. I wanted to see that continue. But I think Tim Settle's floor is right around where Harrison Phillips was. So I don't think you're losing anything, but I think the ceiling for Tim Settle is much higher than I think where Harrison Phillips' ceiling was going to be. And so I love that Brandon Beane likes to bank on that type of stuff on, hey, we can max out at a floor here, but the ceiling, who knows where we could end up with a true penetrating guy here. So I'm excited about that. And then you had alluded to it. It's not officially yet, but Jordan Phillips sounds like that is Ryan Talbot, a friend of the show, said he had a source.
I just got a note from our guy, Josh Barnett, who's the editor over at the Buffalo News. Their information is they are working towards a deal.
Yep.
He's been, that there is interest. They are working towards a deal that he may round out our 4th defensive tackle in that rotation.
So if that's the case, without even adding Ed Oliver in, who's a little undersized, but it's fine because he's so explosive. We're talking about guys that we added 6'4", 6'3", 6'6", but total almost 1,000 pounds of man, 991
the weight
pounds
they
of
actually
man.
Play at, not what's listed at. They are 1,000 pounds.
They're 1,000 pounds of man.
DaQuan Jones plays a 330, 340. Yeah. Jordan Phillips plays a 330, 340. So it's 1,000 pounds of human.
1,000 pounds the Bills just added in the middle of that line. And here's the thing. So I'm glad that we got Von Miller. I'm saying it again. I could just keep going. It feels so good, Greg. I can't stop.
So beautiful.
But interior pressure is like, we're seeing all this rush to get edges, and the money that edges get is crazy. I'm still a believer that interior pressure is where it's at. It matters more. It's more impactful. And so it's great to have it on the edge, and to have especially a guy like Von Miller that everywhere he's gone has had great amount of pressure. But for the Bills to really attack this interior as well, I think is just going to lead to everything that the Bills fans wanted. Even though they were top 10 in sacks last year and had some of the best pressure rate in the NFL, I think this is only going to make things that much better. I really expect this to pop, especially with the additions here in the middle and then continued growth from Ed Oliver. I'm so excited to see how this plays out.
Absolutely. It puts them in a fantastic position. And obviously we know our guys over at the Air Raid Hour put together just a visual that I want to share real quick of what this defensive line looks like that we just put together. It's so incredible. Von Miller, Ed Oliver, DaQuan Jones, Gregory Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Jordan Phillips, Tim Settle, Boogie Basham.
It's real nice on the front end.
Well, and it brings up, so I think Boogie Basham is going to step into the F.A. Obata role as that 5th defensive lineman / rotational defensive tackle. I think we're going to have a 5th defensive end again. And I think it's going to come down to whether we sign Jerry Hughes or bring back Shaq Lawson. And I think it's going to be one of those 2 moves. And it's really going to come down to, does Jerry want to come back on a pretty cheap deal, or does somebody else offer him $6-7 million? Because I don't think the Bills are going to be able to do that. And I know earlier here we had a comment from from, I think Timber was asking, is there money in the banana stand for Cordero Patterson? I made a joke earlier, whether it's corner, running back, Jerry Hughes, everything they've done so far makes no sense. We're going to have to restructure so many things that sure, everything's possible, because I have no idea. They're going to have to do so many restructures and so many extensions to fit in the Von Miller piece, and they're being so creative with the contracts that sure, whatever, they'll find a way. Anyone else that they want to add at some point, I would think it's got to run out, but right now they're adding talent and they're going to figure it out later. I kind of hope it's Jerry Hughes. I kind of do.
Yeah, I like Shaq Lawson. I'm excited that he wanted to come back and play. He and Boogie Basham just feels too similar to me to need two of those, right? I don't know that you need multiple of that in your defense. But what I would like to have is Jerry Hughes on a very limited snap count, still able to bring pressures with a Von Miller. And see what that can do.
Like,
and then make AJ
Von Miller 65%, Jerry Hughes 35%, and
sure,
play the two of them 100% of snaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And make AJ Epinesa earn it. He has not proven that he's earned that spot behind Von Miller, where I feel like he should get that 35%. So bring back Jerry. He's been part of the process. He's been part of this team. He's the only leftover from the Whaley era. I think I would love to see him come back on a cheap deal. It's got to be on a cheap deal for him to come back. It makes sense to me. I don't know what his motivation is to continue to play. I don't know if that's something that he would want to do. But if it does make sense that he would come back on a cheap deal, I would welcome that in a big way, because that, honestly, going into this, Greg, you guys know he was the guy that I was saying, let's bring him back anyway and let him run it back. So if you can get him back,
now he's the compliment.
Limited, yeah, exactly. Oh. Absolutely.
Yeah, having him, like you said, in a limited fashion as the complement to a guy like Von Miller, and to another guy to, like you said, to push AJ Epinesa, not to give anything to Basham or Epinesa. I think we feel pretty good that Rousseau's going to be fine. I actually think we're going to see a really exciting step forward from him with a guy like Von Miller opposite him. But having a guy like Jerry now is what he probably should have been here the last while, as a third rotational defensive end. Now you're talking where you can really limit it, let him do that. So
people in the chat are saying Jerry's gone. That's fine too. Like, if Jerry's ready to call it quits and hang it up, like,
sure,
totally fine. There's other guys that are in that Jerry Hughes range ballpark that are still available. Here's the other thing, guys, and Greg has mentioned this a few times. 80%, 75% of the free agents are still out there. They're not signed. There's plenty of guys that are out there sort of lumped in that same range, that when the chips fall, they're going to look at, hey, the Bills just, what Greg said earlier, the Bills just got Von Miller. Maybe the contract I wanted isn't out there right now. So maybe I'll take a little bit less and come do 1 year with the Bills, go deep into the playoffs, maybe win a championship, and then go get my money next year. There's a Melvin Ingram, maybe willing to take a little bit less to do 1 year with the Bills. I don't know. You brought up Jason Pierre-Paul. I'm not a huge fan of that, but a guy like that I would take in that 35%.
Yeah, Jason Pierre-Paul, Melvin Ingram, Justin Houston.
Sure.
Any of those guys would make, again,
Jacob Martin's a young guy that is still a young guy that you can get in here. So there's a bunch of names.
Yeah. And any of them, you kind of grit your teeth when it's as the number one option, but now everything is on the table now that you have Von Miller, and now that it's a complementary piece just coming off in the, in when you need a couple extra snaps late in the game. Now all those guys make sense, and people are listing Derek Barnett, Melvin Ingram, Justin Houston, all the different guys. I would love, emotionally and sentimentally, I would love for it to be Jerry Hughes, but any of those guys would make sense to come in and push in that fifth defensive end spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, that leads us to sort of these other holes that exist, right? Yeah. Like cornerback 2 is still something.
Oh, wait, one more ad that we forgot. OJ Howard.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Immediately after the Von Miller news.
Still a large human, technically.
Yes. Honestly, still a pretty large human. The man's 6'6", 250. Yeah. OJ Howard, for anybody who doesn't remember, an all-time, college athlete freak coming out to be able to be in that spot. He's the kind of guy that was an all-time prospect at tight end and didn't pan out in the way that many folks were kind of hoping that he would pan out.
Many folks.
And but still was very good. Like had multiple seasons in Tampa that were solid, 34 catches for 565 yards, 34 for 459. He's played every single season. He's been able to go there. The last couple, obviously he got kind of hidden behind Gronk and Cameron Brate, and that we know that Brady kind of prefers a veteran presence in that spot. But now coming in, you're adding a guy who's a very good blocker, a really good athlete, has a lot of upside, and doesn't have any pressure. Gets to come in as a tight end too, along with Dawson Knox, gets to work with Josh Allen, gets to just be a part of it, is going to give Aaron Cromer and Ken Dorsey options to be able to run 12 personnel, to be able to be in a spot that we now can run that, and you can run or pass out of it, and you're not giving anything away where we had to go with the 6 offensive line the last time you kind of knew that we were going to run and just passed a little bit out of it. Now you could run 12 personnel, and you don't know, because we could easily play action that and go down the seams with Nas and Howard. I really like that, and it looks like it's a very reasonable deal. It was a guy that was on my list as far as tight end options, and I'm excited that was another addition that came in tonight in that flurry of action.
Yeah, it was in the flurry of action. And this one's a tough one for me because I was incredibly high on OJ Howard in the draft. Like I'm glad I deleted that old Twitter account, because you would have seen some embarrassing takes of me begging the Bills to take him, because honestly, like I just fell in love with the athleticism, the size, even though it was limited in Alabama, the type of production that he was able to get, that game breaking type production that he had. And it really hasn't translated, even though he's had, like you said, some seasons with some production. It hasn't translated in that way. And some of that is him being buried. But at the same time, he wasn't able to overcome those other guys. Like you would think that if that talent was really there, that he could at least overcome some of these guys. I don't know. Tampa was unwilling to trade him, which is a little crazy now that he's just gone.
Not that they lost him for nothing.
Yeah, they could have for sure gotten something for him, you would think, just for the potential alone. So I'm reasonably excited by this. What it doesn't do for me, what I was hoping for out of a tight end too, was blocking. He's not a very good blocker. I think that you add a pass catching threat, which is what matters more in the NFL. I get it. You want more pass catching. You want Josh to cook. I get all those things. But that's really my concern is, can Aaron Cromer and Dorsey work with him to develop him into a better blocker? We've seen Dawson Knox take a big leap over the last year in his blocking ability, and maybe that they feel Rob Boris and Cromer can get some of that out of OJ Howard. And I think that
I know we make fun of PFF grades all the time, so now I'm going to use that. He has multiple seasons with very, very good blocking grades. So
maybe I didn't look at his grades.
I think that your point about can Aaron Cromer and can that group help develop it? I think there's the potential there when you have that elite of an athlete and two seasons where there's still in a full 16 game season, he has multiple that were 75 plus in their blocking scheme. So hopefully it's something that they could develop a little bit more in their
somebody's saying here, Bruce Nolan said it was he's incredible, or a great pass blocker and solid run blocker. I haven't seen it. I was looking at tight ends pretty close. Yeah. I didn't see it personally in the games that I watched of Howard. So I'll have to go back and look, but the blocking concerned me. It seemed sloppy, like he was reaching at times, things like that. So I'm willing to take an L on that and go back and look, but he wasn't high up on my tight end. Yeah. He wasn't high up on my tight end 2 list because of those things. I was looking for more of a, somebody that would
a Durham Smythe, a Mo Alley Cox, guys like that we know, even Hayden Hurst, that we know are like legitimately good and
can also catch.
He's
but you're getting more of a,
and then the other side.
Now he's more athlete. This is almost more in line with what they were looking for of Ingram. Except he doesn't play the slot. He's much more inline guy. He hasn't been out in the slot. So I'm interested to see how they're going to use these 2 tight ends. I think at the least when he's on the field with Knox, you have to account for both, just the physicality, the ability, like you said, to stretch those seams.
Yeah, 2 freaky athletes to be able to put in spots like that. So that does bring us now real quick. We were excited legitimately. We thought JD McKissick was a legitimately good ad. And now seeing what's going on tonight with Von Miller and OJ Howard and Jordan Phillips, I wonder if he regrets his decision. Like,
no regret.
Why you would go back to I get it. It's where he's had success. He lives there, wanting to just stay comfortable in your comfort zone. But man, choosing Carson Wentz over Josh Allen, it just
he's moved around a lot in his NFL career.
It took him a while to find, and Washington was the first place that really gave him a lot of run.
Yep. And so I know when the news that he signed, you had Jaret Patterson, you had a couple guys from Washington stating their disappointment. Yeah, he's a great guy. So who knows what the draw coming back to Washington is. They're human beings, so I'm not going to knock him. I was frustrated because he was the guy on my list that I was most excited on the offensive side of the ball to bring in. He's the perfect back for what I'm looking for in this offense, which is just a good guy that can pass catch. He can play a little bit like you were staying outside. He can do a little bit of stuff lined up in the slot. He can get those swing passes, screen passes, but he can also be a running back in a spot. And so he was really the perfect type of that running back, third down running back out of New England that we've seen for years kill the Bills. And to know that the Bills, here's where I'll take a win, even though they didn't end up signing him. I'll take a win on the type, right? Like I thought they had a type that I believe that they need for this offense, and they saw that too. And so I feel good about that. They were also win on James White before he went back to New England. That was another guy on my free agent list. So I think if they are going to be adding another running back here in free agency, I think you got to look at some of these pass catching guys. I think Darryl Williams is now moved in for me in that next slot for my free agent wish list. I think he's a guy right in line with like a Mckissick style that you could get in here and give you that same type of thing. But there's other guys out there, but anybody that is a pass catching type back, I think the Bills now agree with what we're saying, or at least I'm in line with what the Bills are thinking, and that's what they would like to add.
So let's start there with some of the other options. I don't think we're going to see big spending at the Cordarrelle Patterson, Leonard Fournette end of the spending,
not unless they want a steep deal.
Or they want to just come play for free to play with, Josh Allen and Von Miller. I also think Melvin Gordon and Rashad Penny are probably also in that price range.
I think Penny's on that range too, yeah.
But again, if anybody wants to come play for free, by all means. But once you get into Marlon Mack, Justin Jackson, during the show here, Raheem Mostert signed with the Dolphins, which makes sense to go back with Mike McDaniels. And one that both of us have talked about here, Darryl Williams. I think that there are some names with Jackson, Justin Jackson, Darryl Williams, Marlon Mack. Those are the kind of guys who would make sense. All really good receiving skills, but also can carry the ball and that are coming from spots where they would go. I really think those are the kind of guys that would make sense here as an alternative to Mckissick.
Yeah, and the reason for me I want Darryl Williams back is because KC wanted him. And I think that anytime you have players that the guys that you're on par with want for real, that you should be interested in getting those guys too, because clearly he was a good part of what they were doing, and you have a highly prolific offense. I think that he could be sort of in that same mold. But yeah, I would take a Marlon Mack on a cheap deal for a reclamation project here. He's had issues with the injuries. Maybe he looks at this facility, playing with Josh Allen as a way to reclaim. Maybe he takes a 1-year deal, prove it deal to get back out on the market and get one more contract, because running back lifespans, the shelf life on these guys isn't great. This is it, a one last chance to get a contract. And he's probably going to have to take a prove it deal. So any of these types of guys, for sure. What I don't want is to go into the draft with Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. I do think you can draft the guy, but again, that's more of a hope, is not a plan to.
Yeah, you don't know who's going to be available.
Right.
So, we also talked about here that our guy, John Scott, said that it sounds he's not used an opinion. He has sourced information that Cole Beasley is not going to be back with the
one way or another.
He doesn't know if it's going to be a trade or if it's going to be a release. I said there is a contract clause coming up. He has a roster bonus that's due on Sunday that he's obviously not going to get. So we basically have between now and Sunday to be able to move him, to be able to go that route. And they reported that's not there. So some other names, I don't know that we just go into the draft with no other receiver in place. And I could see that, maybe Isaiah Mckenzie and some of those guys are enough of a floor that we go to the lower end of this market. I know Joe Biscaglia brought up guys like Adam Humphries, who is a functional slot receiver. That would mean, hey, we really need to invest with a high draft pick to have somebody come in. But other guys that are very similar to a Cole Beasley, obviously multiple times, the two that I think are most logical are Jarvis Landry or Jamison Crowder. Those are legit slot receivers who would come in. I think there's other guys who maybe could play some reps here. I see Brian Pringle in the chat, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We saw Russell Gage sign in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Also, Cedric Wilson. Keelan Cole is a guy who's played some of those kind of snaps before. But I think those are the kind of guys that obviously at the higher end, if there was something cheap for a Jarvis Landry or Jamison Crowder, that would be great. But ultimately, I think it's probably at the lower end of this, and that we're probably lower at the, some other range of Byron Pringle or, Keelan Cole or someone like that, or an Adam Humphries or Scotty Miller type to be in that spot, and then an investment in the draft.
Yeah, I would love to see Byron Pringle come in. That was a guy that was on pretty much all of our universal.
Byron Pringle, Jamison Williams were good.
Yeah, sure. And then an idea that was presented because of the situation Jacksonville's in, Laviska Shenault possibly available in trade. I think maybe you could swing something. But again, I don't know if he's a true person where he's at in his career and development, if he's really a true guy to take over at wide receiver 3, or if he would be competing more with Isaiah McKenzie, Stevenson type thing at that wide receiver 4.
Astro and TP here bringing up Juju. What do you think about him?
I'm good. I mean, I like Juju. I think he's a talented dude. I think he's a good, more possession style.
Yeah, he would be guy. In a slot guy. He'd probably be okay.
Sure, he's fine. I think the attention that he brings is unnecessary. I don't know that he's got a weird personality that I don't know that we need. Maybe he's just a fun guy and he's been read wrong this entire time and he fit right in. I didn't love the stuff that we saw from him in Mike Tomlin's locker room of, the videos in the locker rooms. That stuff's not going to fly with Sean McDermott, of him doing videos and posting it to Instagram of in the locker. None of that's cool. So he might not even be on their radar for anything like that. But I do think Juju will get money somewhere. If Zay Jones got money, well, I know that's the Jaguars and we can't compare the rest of the league to what the Jaguars are doing. But if a guy like Zay Jones can get money, I think Juju's got a market that probably exceeds the Bills.
Yeah, I think our best shot out of any of those names that might be able to take that kind of deal, I think Jamison Crowder is our best shot at a
or Landry now sees
slot. Landry would be.
Landry sees Von Miller come over and sees a shot at a ring. He's late in his career. Maybe he's made some money in his career. We keep saying that and everyone keeps taking big deals, but I'm saying somebody's going to take a cheap deal to come play here. He might be that guy.
He certainly was making a lot of money in Cleveland and was certainly in a spot where, that's probably not.
Does he want to go to another Cleveland where you're a pretend contender or you're not even a contender?
He checks a lot of those boxes I joked about with Rodger Saffold, where if you're going to have a guy, he has made $64 million in his career. Those are the kind of guys that might. And Jarvis Landry, for as much as I don't care for him as a human, he is a great blocker.
He checks all the boxes.
He would fit everything on the field of what we're looking for. So I'd prefer Jamison Crowder, but Jarvis Landry would make a lot of sense.
Well, and here's the other thing is we heard the Bills were in on Landry, but then we heard it was down to I think Kansas City and New Orleans or something.
Kansas City,
it was like
Green Bay.
Was it Green Bay?
Yeah.
I could have sworn it was New Orleans, but either way. But then we didn't hear anything here now for the last 24 hours.
That was when it was a potential trade. And then when he got released, then all of a sudden there was some initial buzz and then nothing.
Yeah, no, this was post-release that I had heard. I'm pretty sure it was New Orleans. The last report I heard was it was down to, because at first it was Bills and KC, and then all of a sudden Bills were not in these tweets, and we haven't heard anything now for 24 hours. And so that interest might have, maybe his team said, hey, here's what I'm looking for, and everybody kind of backed off and said, I don't know at that age, man. So his market might not be what he thinks it is either.
Yeah.
And then that puts the Bills back in play. So I don't know. We're speculating at this point, but if there's
he was down in Atlanta was the last I'd heard.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
visiting Atlanta.
Sure. And if they get Deshaun, who knows what kind of pull that is for somebody. But if he's looking to be a competitor and win a title and the market's not what he thinks it is, he really does check all the boxes. If there's a person in free agency available right now in the market that checks the boxes that you want, it's definitely Jarvis Landry.
Yeah. Real quick here, our guy Daryl is asking, is Star retiring for sure?
No idea.
So one, we don't know that. I will say that there were some legitimate whispers of that coming into the offseason, not anything reported or anything formal, but some legitimate whispers from from people that had heard that. And now, honestly, with signing Tim Settle and DaQuan Jones and Jordan Phillips, I don't know how you can read that as anything other than the team preparing as though Star is going to retire. You don't sign 3 additional defensive tackles unless you're pretty sure Star is gone. So that is pure speculation. That's me connecting dots. But man, those are some easy dots to connect. I'd be really surprised if that's the case.
Yeah, I agree.
And now our last position, honestly, the only real genuine hole, in my opinion, where right now we'd be fine everywhere else going into the draft right now. I think we're going to add a couple more pieces, but if we didn't, I'm fine, except for at cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
The one spot we saw Levi Wallace sign a 2-year, $8 million deal in Pittsburgh.
Spot track deal.
That was less than half of the spot track projection, who had him at 9.7 million. He got $4 million per year. When Levi Wallace signed for $4 million per year, I just don't know how you can read that as anything other than the team choosing not to bring him back and just decided to move on. There's a small chance that it was Levi Wallace choosing to move on and like, hey, these guys are valuing me. I don't want another bargain basement deal from you guys. These guys are valuing me as a starter, and God bless him if that's the case. But the fact that he signed for $4 million, I think, shows the high end. He just had his best season. You know, he pumped up his agent, had a lot of positive stuff out there. There's an awful lot of good articles. You saw Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl talking about him. His agent was putting in a lot of work to get positive buzz out of there, and it still ended up in a $4 million per year deal. So at cornerback, we're also in a spot now where some people have gotten soaked up. Obviously, a couple of names that you and I have talked about. I think on the top of our list is Dante Jackson and Rasul Douglas. I think those are our 2 top wish list items, is one of those 2. If we don't get someone on our wish list, then we get into, you know, does Von Miller create an opening for Stephon Gilmore to come back? Is that weird?
Not weird to me if it's a deal.
Yeah. If he's willing to sign, I know other guys.
Another guy that's made a lot of money, but he's also won championship, so he might not be chasing a ring. He might be chasing money.
You know, other guys who are not as exciting. You're talking about a Steven Nelson. You're talking about an older guy like I know
liked
Jack
Steven Nelson
Jenkins
last year, but
yeah,
Pittsburgh decided to go with Levi Wallace over bringing him back.
He did. That is an interesting choice. Then you have like the Robert Alfords of the world, or older guys like Joe Hayden, like Patrick Peterson, which you're only doing if you're also pairing with a high-end premium draft pick. I'm fine with a Patrick Peterson or Joe Hayden and a first-round pick.
I think you're doing that. Even if you bring in Dante Jackson, I think you're maybe not first round, but those first 3 picks, those first 3 picks of yours. Yeah, you're going with a cornerback somewhere in there either way. And so maybe Dante Jackson buys you a little buffer to not reach, but I think no matter where we're at here. So Best Highlight says, what about a trade for James Bradbury? Sign me up. I would love to do that. I don't know how much.
I don't know. Like I said, we've already gotten so far out of the realm of what I thought was possible that sure, let's go add James Bradbury too. We'll figure it out. We'll do the math later.
I don't know what that would look like.
I will say for James Bradbury, I don't think trading for his $13 million contract is realistic. Short of having
they're about to release him though in like 48 hours if they can.
Waiting them out to release him and then signing him makes a lot more sense because he already missed the first wave of free agency. Now there's no more Jaguars money out there anymore. Now you might be able to be in a spot where, hey, come over to us for a $6 million deal with some incentives that could get you up into more. And then if it works out, we'll re-sign you next year to bring you back. That's I don't think we can fit the $13 million. I think that it would have to be a release, but if we agree to an extension, you could make it work.
You could flip that money around a little bit.
Yeah, James Bradbury would be the highest end player that we could add. I mean, I guess Stephon Gilmore is as good or better than Bradbury as well. But I think Bradbury is better than Dante Jackson or Rasul Douglas. I just don't know that we can afford it.
Yeah, the problem with Bradbury too is that for him, I think he's better, but he's towards the end of his career and how many years he has left where he could come and chase a ring with the Bills. And I think his market would be best here. So yeah, I'm cool with waiting that out. But I believe the Bills are
20. He's going to turn 29 this summer. He's 28. So he's I mean, a 3-year deal would be fine at 29, 30, 31. Maybe a 2-year deal would be
corners
okay.
start to age out around
30 is usually the cliff.
Yeah, it's right there. So he's right there at the end. So this would be a great place to finish it off, right, with the guys that you started up with in McDermott and Bean. I think there's a draw there to come back to McDermott. And then maybe there's a discount willing to take there. And then the fact that, like we keep saying, you got Von Miller, you got Josh Allen, you're doing something here. So there's a little bit of a draw. And depending how the rest of the next 2 days go before whenever they do release him, how this market dries up. The cornerback market, it has been kind of weird because you saw Sidney Jones come off the board. You saw Keller Weatherspoon come off the board. You saw a couple other names come off the board here, but it hasn't really had a domino effect where you're seeing it kind of all go on a run. At some point here, that market's going to really start to dry up. And what I don't want to see the Bills do is wait on a Bradbury and miss out on Douglas and Jackson waiting on this guy to come, and then he doesn't come either. They got to make a move here. I think in the next 48 hours, by the end of the weekend here, you got to find somebody.
And I think we heard that there were some legitimate rumblings that they were in on Rasul Douglas. Yep. So, that was a legitimate one.
They're in this market. Yeah, for sure.
They're definitely poking around here. And I think, honestly, that's where their attention shifts to now, is doing that. So, as we kind of wrap things up, for the overall show, we'll come back for Von Miller here. It's really an exciting statement about the franchise, about the organization. Von Miller left the defending Super Bowl champions in Los Angeles, California.
It was all run it back. Let's run it back.
To choose to come to Buffalo to join this team. And that from everything we read, Los Angeles was offering very similar money. Like I
don't know how.
Correct. Well, the same thing. I don't know how the hell the Bills are doing it either. But one of my Rams guys said they heard the Rams were offering $17 million. And that the fact that Von Miller chose for the same money in this, to leave Los Angeles and the defending Super Bowl champions to come to Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, you got to just let that wash over you. Bathe in that statement. Von Miller, one of the most career sacks of any active player, Super Bowl MVP Von Miller, 2-time Super Bowl champion Von Miller,
premier free agent in free agency.
Yeah,
this year,
number one on a ton of lists of free agent rankings of the top available guy overall. Just it's unbelievable to be in a spot like that. PFF had him all the way down at number 4 on their free agent list behind Devontae Adams and Terron Armstead.
Well, I didn't think of Adams because they didn't really hit free agency.
Yeah, but neither did Godwin either.
Right.
So I number 2 behind Terron Armstead.
Sure. It's
just unbelievable that that's the kind of guy that came to Buffalo, and I'm just not used to it. I don't. It costs a lot of money, but it's unbelievable that they added that kind of finishing element onto this. And Astor here bringing up, he has a great relationship with Bruce Smith. I do want to circle it back to a comment I made earlier in the show. Von Miller hosts, he's the one who does these pass rush camps, these pass rush summits that those guys get together. He's the main guy that does those because he is looked at as the prototypical technical pass rusher in the NFL. That also is going to age well. That also means his technique is so elite.
Yeah. He
That's
takes care of
going to
himself
age well. He takes excellent care of himself. He's coming to the place with the best health and wellness facilities in the entire NFL. And now that's the guy that Gregory Rousseau and AJ Epinesa and Carlos Basham get to just soak up and wash over them to be able to do that. It's fantastic to be able to do those things. And
I want to jump in on this point here. William on YouTube. First of all, thanks for the donation here. And some people in Buff hating on Von signing wanted Chandler Jones, who's also 32, has 107 sacks since 2011, while Von has 115. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't even look at Von Miller because I thought it was not even in the realm of possibility. I would have loved to. When I first started looking through free agency, I saw Von Miller's name and it's like, God, that would be nice, right? But it's not going to happen. And then you heard the rumblings of Chandler Jones, and I thought I could make that connection because Rochester, he played at Syracuse. Maybe he comes back home on a discount and wants to play.
And was talking about how money wasn't the biggest thing.
Correct. We wanted to win, all these things. He wanted to be in the right position, yada, yada. And the media really jumped onto that too. And so you started to see Bills Mafia get in. So I sort of had a toe in that Chandler Jones water. But ultimately, yeah, if you would have told me going into free agency, you have a chance at Von Miller or you have a chance at Chandler Jones, I would have been pounding the table for Von Miller over Chandler Jones 10 out of 10 times. Like, and I like Chandler Jones. He's a good player, but Von Miller is a different level. Like, this is one of the better pass rushers of the last decade.
Yes.
Is now playing for your team. And so, yeah, that's a great point that I think if you're upset that the Bills didn't land Chandler Jones still, I think that's crazy talk. And so that also goes to a point that I want to make is as soon as Chandler Jones signed somewhere else, there was a lot of rumblings about, oh, we continue to miss out on edge. This is a problem. Brandon Beane can't land the guy. He just hit a freaking grand slam of landing the edges.
Landed the marquee free agent.
Yeah. You think JJ Watt last year would have been a splash signing? That is pales in comparison to what the Bills were able to just do tonight and bringing in Von Miller. Von Miller is going to have more success later into his career than JJ Watt will. He's a different type of guy. He's a different type of specimen. This is going to be a very good, productive couple years, in my opinion, for Von Miller in this defense. So kudos to Brandon Beane for getting that monkey off his back, because that was a narrative that I saw forming here over a few hour window of like, oh, Brandon Beane can't land the deal, as if there isn't other things that go on behind the scenes here and good business decisions that go on behind the scenes that lead to those deals not working out. Well, you know what? No more. Brandon Beane did it.
Yeah, and just as an FYI, I know a couple of people, the Bills team account didn't announce Tim Settle today, and understandably, after the J.D. Mckissick incident, there was some, concern of like, hey, are we sure here? I was, from everything I've heard, it's that he's traveling in to sign.
Correct. Yeah, he's got to actually sign the paperwork.
He isn't physically here yet to sign the paperwork.
Yeah.
So he's on his way, and I think we'll see that tomorrow. And Patrick here saying he updated his profile on Twitter to say Bills Mafia and everything. Like, I don't think there's
he's been putting out tweets. Well. He's in, and it's just a matter of getting that ink to dry. So
no reason to be concerned with anything there.
No, and you saw the Mitch Morse do it from home. That's because they already knew they were going to get that done with Mitch Morse and mailed him priority mail to get that done. Like, you have to get a person.
He had his daughter help him hold the pen. It was a pretty cute picture of him.
That stuff needs to physically happen. So he'll be in tomorrow, probably first thing in the morning, signing that stuff. Yeah.
So, all right, man. Tonight is an awesome night. Thank you guys. The chat was awesome. You guys were fantastic. Just, have fun with this, man. This is fantastic. We just added Von Miller, DaQuan Jones, Tim Settle, Rodger Saffold, OJ Howard, bringing back Jordan Phillips, extended other people, and we're going to add more. It's going to continue to get more and more fun. Now you have every free agent in the NFL stopping dead in their tracks, going to their agent and saying, hey, what's going on in Buffalo? Can we go see what's going on there? Everyone is now asking, hey, Von Miller went there. What's going on in Buffalo? Let's go check that out. This is our new world. When you have Josh Allen playing like the best player on the planet, this is what happens. People want to come and be a part of that. So we appreciate you guys so much. Aaron, any final thoughts for the people?
Yeah, I'm really excited here. Another, thing is, a couple of these teams in our division, not the Patriots. Patriots are having a horrible offseason, by the way. You should be dunking on
Go check their beat writers are having a rough
They're
day.
In chaos. But like Jets are having a sneaky good, annoyingly good offseason. I'm not worried. There's a lot of catch up they have to play to get, but they're putting together a little something nice over there. I think Miami's
doing a decent job,
but they're doing a decent job. So there's some other interesting things in this division. I don't think we're definitely not the AFC West. I'll tell you that, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, best of luck to everybody out there.
Right? No, but this is a super exciting time. I'm really happy that we have a team that has responsible leadership. Brandon Beane is filling these holes so that we can go this whole next month when Greg and I start covering the draft. We can really look at what are the best players available that also fit future needs? Because I think the Bills will address cornerback too. I think they've addressed enough of the other positions where you don't have to take anything at 25. And if Jamison Williams is there at 25 and he falls to you with that type of athleticism, perfect. We can take him and hide him here. If the best cornerback on your board falls, perfect. We've got Dante Jackson or Rasul Douglas, and we can keep this guy and let him win the job over Dane Jackson. I think they're going to put themselves in a position to take whoever that best player with need available is. And so I'm excited here as free agency continues to shake out and we get into the second wave. We haven't really started working on the draft all that much, Greg. So I'm excited to dig into this with you and see how this goes, knowing that our needs are really getting filled.
Oh, it's fantastic. And that, like you said, responsible leadership, guys who, not only responsible, but willing to be a little irresponsible when it makes sense.
We say it all the time. He's more aggressive. Bean is more aggressive than anyone wants to give him credit for.
Gosh. So being in this spot, I mean, this is all in as it gets, with the Josh Allen contract, we didn't lose anyone of consequence and went all in on a player like Von Miller. This is incredible to be in this kind of position. So enjoy it. I will say, help us out here. Give us a rating, give us a like, give us a review. If you had fun with the show tonight, tell somebody else about it. Tell them to check us out. It really means a lot. That's how we are able to grow here. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell somebody tomorrow. Everyone is going to be talking about Von Miller, Daryl running back at 25. I'm not ready for that. Settle down. But, everyone is going to be talking about Von Miller. Tell them to come check out our show. If you want to get the top reaction to what's going on to Von Miller, go listen to the Cover One reaction show last night. You're going to love it. Tell somebody about it. That's my biggest ask for everybody. It would mean the world to us. But thank you so much. The chat was fantastic tonight. You guys were awesome. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Thompson. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are